Hi everyone, Elsie Jensen here. Today we are going to be making some beef tacos with some homemade sourdough tortillas. We're going to whip up some guacamole, salsa, corn salsa, and all cilantro lime rice. So let's start getting the rice going. I've got 1.5 cups of jasmine rice, and I'm going to give it a quick rinse in my sink in a strainer here. That's going to allow it to get nice and like all of the kind of powdery residual that's left on it off, leaves for a much better end product. So give it a rinse, kind of get all of that cloudiness out, and then it will cook up lovely for our dinner. There we go. Give it a couple of shakes. And then I have in my pot here 2 1/4 cups of water for our 1.5 cups of rice. And we're going to turn that on to high, bring it to a boil first, but I'm going to then add some fresh herbs to it. So we're going to add in about a tablespoon of olive oil. And let's chop up some herbs to go into this rice. Okay, we've got some green onions here. I'm going to take the tips off, and then we are going to use kind of the white parts of the green onions. They'll be just lovely. They'll have time to let out some of their flavor since they're a bit more astringent than the tips. There we go. We'll save the rest for some of our things. So we've got some green onions, and then we have some cilantro here. These are like pre-washed cilantro. It's nice and fresh. We're just going to take a big pile of leaves, and we're going to give it a nice kind of mince up. And pull out any of these big stems. You don't want those in there. And this is going to go into our rice. So we're going to have a nice kind of cilantro lime rice with some fresh herbs in it. And we're also going to put in a bay leaf and some oregano. Here we go. I'm going to go over it several times so we don't have any really big leaves going in there. There's another little stalk we're going to just pop out. Okay. So I've got my green onions and my cilantro. I'm going to have them add them in here. Got a few more left. There we go. And let me grab my oregano and a bay leaf. So we're going to put 1 whole bay leaf in here. And then I have about a 1/2 teaspoon left of dried oregano. So we're going to throw that in there as well. And then I'm going to give it a good stir and then mix those ingredients, those spices in. And then we're going to add in some chicken bouillon and some lime zest and a little bit of lime juice for the rest of the spices in it. And then once it comes to a boil, we'll put a lid on and reduce it down to low. Okay, let's start with the lime zest. Let me get my zester out, and I'm just going to zest this in here. And this is going to be for our cilantro rice, which will be a side for our tacos. We're doing just our old school ground beef tacos. I haven't done those in a while, but kind of got a craving for some tacos. And then we'll cook up our sourdough tortillas that we made earlier, our dough for it. So we'll cook them up, and then we'll make some salsas and dips. There we go. So we've got some lime zest. You don't need a whole lot because it's pretty flavorful here. And then we're going to cut it in half. And I'm going to bring my chicken bouillon. We're going to add a nice spoonful of the chicken bouillon to here. That's going to give it a little savory flavor, act as kind of the saltiness for our rice. And then we're going to squeeze in our lime juice. So you want about a teaspoon of lime. You don't need too much. So it might just be a half. It just depends on how juicy your limes are. Here we go. Okay, I think a half a lime will work. You don't want it to be so overpowering with lime. You just want a nice kind of, you know, a slight lime kick. Kind of cuts through the herbiness. Okay. So once that comes to a boil, we'll turn it down to low and let it simmer. Okay. A little there. I'm going to start turning on my skillet over here to start warming up. Get that grain of rice off, because it takes a hot minute for the skillet to warm up so that it will be ready for our tortillas. But here we're going to put out about 2 pounds of ground beef into our skillet here. I buy my ground beef in bulk and then I divide it up into, I like to say they're about a pound each. And let me turn on our skillet and I'll grab a spatula. We're going to break it up and we're going to start sauteing it. Once it gets to be a little bit of browning on it, then we'll drain a little bit of that grease out and then start seasoning it up. So, and this is, I believe it's the Costco's bulk meat, which I want to say is like 83.17, like fat wise. So it'll be a nice, good taco meat. Sometimes I find when you get too lean of meat with tacos, it's just same with burgers, just not quite as good. Okay, let's get those warming up there. And let's press out a couple of our tortillas while our skillet is warming up. I'm going to turn that way. So I've got my tortilla press here. I rolled out our sourdough that we made for our tortillas either. So I've got about 16 little balls because we're going to make some slightly smaller tortillas, not normally my big ones like we normally do. I'm going to give it a nice kind of smush around. We'll put the parchment paper on top. And you do want to make sure you put it between 2 pieces of parchment paper. Otherwise, it will be hard to get off your press. And we're just going to squeeze it down. And we've got our first tortilla. We'll make another one. Kind of give it. We'll close it up. And I will say this is much easier to do it with a tortilla press than it is with like a rolling pin. Plus, they come out like perfect little circles with the press. I try to roll out a tortilla thing and it's never works out. Okay, I'm getting there. Yeah. Now our dough has a good amount of olive oil in it, so you don't need to add any more to your skillet. You do just kind of a dry cook on it. Probably do too.
Where did you get the tortilla crust?
Good old Amazon. I just kind of looked on there for a couple of models, and this one had a lot of reviews. It is Pataconera tortillas. It says Victoria on it. Works great. It's heavy though. It's cast iron, so it is definitely got some heft behind it. I'll press a few more out. There we go. That way we'll have our next batch ready. There we go. Let's mix up our meat. Once we go ahead.
Question: where's the skillet from?
The skillet is hex clad, so it's their griddle pan. It's a 12-inch griddle pan. I love it. I use it for pancakes, grilled cheese, naan, tortillas. It was one of those like random add-on for like $99. And I was like, do I really need a pan? It's still expensive even for $99. And I didn't think I would use as much, but I use it all the time. So I absolutely love it. Okay, let's start making some of our salsas here and prepping some of our ingredients for our tacos. So I've got some vine ripe tomatoes here. Give them a quick rinse.
You got a question? Any plans for Mother's Day?
I think we're gonna go to my mom's house and swim in the pool and order food. You know, we used to go out to eat, But as I say, with young children, it's not the most enjoyable experience. So, the aquarium restaurant was great for Teddy's birthday because it was engaging for them. But I think this week we're probably just gonna order food out and swim. And I think it will be just lovely, relaxing. The kids will be engaged and happy, which means I will be happy. So nothing too glorious. Okay, I'm gonna dice up my tomatoes. Some of these are gonna be for salsa, and some of these are gonna be just for toppings on top of our tacos. So think of like a supreme taco.
You have a request to make a Caribbean dish soon?
Ooh, I have to definitely look into that. I do love Caribbean food. I've made a few things. I've done like the Caribbean like beef stew before, but I'll have to look into that and see what it is. But I will definitely research that. I always like to find new ideas and to try things. I'm a very adventurous eater. I always try everything at least once. There we go. And that's kind of my motto with my kids. I want them to try everything at least once, and then they can kind of decide what they like it. They say you have to try a food 7 times before you can truly decide whether you like it or not. So that's what I always tell my kids when they say they don't like something. I'm like, well, you haven't tried it 7 times, yeah.
I don't believe that.
That's what, when I used to work with, children with disabilities, and that's what the feeding therapist always said. Got to try it 7 times.
Hannah sent you some good.
Oh, well, thank you, Hannah. We appreciate that. They give this a nice stir. Once it gets to a really big boil, that's when we'll turn the down and put the lid on. Not a little boil. If you put the lid on too soon, then you're going to get more of a crunchy rice. You need to get that high, like fast boil first to kind of soften it up, especially if you don't do the rice soak. Okay, let's break these guys up. Getting there. And there we go. Okay, so we're going to put some of these tomatoes are going to go for our toppings on our tacos. And Evie is the one who, she just loves tomatoes. She's like her mama. I love tomatoes so much. I think she got her love of tomatoes from me because I would always be eating, like when I was pregnant with Evie, all I could eat were salads, nothing else. Everything else made me sick. I had ICP, which is like essentially like acute liver failure brought on by pregnancy. And so all I could eat were things that were cold and fresh. And I ate so many salads and so many tomatoes. And I think that's why she loves to eat them. So we're going to have our tomatoes here. This is going to be for our tomato salsa, and that's going to be for topping our tacos with. So I'm kind of doing them in stages here, getting our prep done. Let's chop up our green onions here as I keep my eye on our tortillas. I always say the first batch of tortillas on the skillet take forever because, once that skillet's nice and hot, they go quick. It's just like with pancakes. That first, round just takes forever. Okay, so we've got our bits of our green onions. We threw some of them in with our rice. And the rest is going to go in for our corn salsa.
Good question. Are you making Pico De Gallo?
I guess it is a Pico De Gallo because it is a chunky, mild salsa. So yes, Pico De Gallo. Okay, we've got a good boil on our rice here. And I'm going to turn it down and cover it with my lid. Let's make sure I turn the right one down. Okay. And let's see there we go. We're getting a nice little toast up on our tortillas. I'm going to turn them down now that my skillet is getting warm. Break up our meat just a little bit. I find if you cook your ground beef slower and let it like kind of simmer for a while, it's really, really good. There's some people who will cook their ground beef for their tacos for like 2 hours, a low simmer where it kind of like falls apart. That's a lot of dedication for a taco meal. I'm the 30-minute taco meal lady. Nothing more. Let's get our next tortilla. That way we can put 2 on here. And these are flour tortillas, so they're just a little bit thicker than if you do corn tortillas, but they're lovely.
Plus the sourdough.
Yes, they are the sourdough in them, which just makes them gorgeous. As my sister-in-law always says, she's from Ireland, and I guess they refer to food as gorgeous, which is actually, if you think about it, is more correct than because to gorge yourself is to eat everything, so it's probably better than calling somebody gorgeous. But I always think it's funny. There we go. Got our next kind of sets down. Perfect. Let me go grab a plate for this. We can start stacking up our little teeny tiny tortillas. Got our nice little there, and we'll put our next set on. I'm going to turn down my thing to about a 4 because they'll cook a lot faster now that the skillet is nice and warm. I actually might even be able to put 3 on here. We'll try that, see how it goes. Okay. I'm going to give this a stir. And the reason I don't add my spices in yet is because you want to get that grease out before you do season it up. So I'm just cooking it down until it sweats that out. Otherwise, you'll have just greasy tacos, which can give you some killer heartburn. There we go. Okay. Let's chop up some onion. We don't need a whole lot of onion. So we're going to use just a half of a yellow onion. Technically, you want to use a white onion for Mexican food. It is like it's very astringent. It works really well with salsas and topping it, but I only had a yellow. So yellow is what's going to work today. But white onions are ideal for salsas and topping on tacos. I'm going to do a nice kind of small mince on it. There we go. And do it nice and thin because my husband really likes them nice and small to sprinkle on his tacos. And then in the salsa, I like them small as well, almost as if you're mincing them. There we go. And now we're going to go over them a couple more times until we've got a nice kind of finer onion dice on it, just because then they aren't as strong in flavor. There we go. Okay. So we'll put one on our plate for our tacos. And then we're going to have some go in our salsa, or Pico De Gallo. And then I'm going to put a little bit in our corn salsa as well. Normally I would use red onion in my corn salsa, but again, I just used what I have today. Okay, we've got our onions chopped up. Let's give this. Our meat is about ready to drain for it. I just kind of wait until all the red is gone. That way I have all that fat sweated out of it. Before we do that, let's see if these are ready. Oh, beautiful. Okay, so I'm going to cook this one a little bit longer on that side because it's a little hotter over there. We'll do a rotate. There we go. And now what I do, instead of straining my taco meat, because that's always dangerous, what I'm going to do is I'm going to push my meat into one corner. I'm going to take a couple paper towels at a time, and I'm just going to fold it up, and I'm going to soak up the grease there. I'll grab tongs to remove it out, but it just makes it easier than trying to strain it. Then you always lose a couple pieces of meat to the sink, and you have to try to strain it over a bowl because you can't put grease down. But this is the way I find, and it soaks it up great, and that gets most of that grease out. So I've got already one thing, and then it can just go straight into the trash. You don't have to worry about getting grease drippings later. So, and then we're going to move it to the other side. Kind of lean, but you can see I don't have very much left in here. Lean it just a little bit there until we've got it all kind of down. And then we'll put my paper towel in there, and I'm going to just use my tongs and soak it up. That way you won't have greasy tacos. And you don't have to do all that, ring trying to hold a plate or a spatula, or if you've got the bougie strainers for the meat, you don't need to even do that here. There we go. Perfect. So I've got all of that grease out. All it took was a couple paper towels, so we're good. We'll let that cook up. See if this guy's ready to flip. Perfect. Those are about ready. We'll let them saute just a little bit as we fold out our next set of tortillas. And again, nice and easy. And I will say, once you have tried homemade tortillas, it's really hard to go back to store-bought ones, especially when it's very easy. It's very minimal amount of work. I mean, I'm literally bending and pressing down. It's probably more work to open up my tortilla bag from the grocery store than it is to do this. Okay. And the dough, we made it up early during our lunchtime stream, and then I just shaped it out and it sat. So that was hardly any work as well. Let's get our next set of, let that one cook a little bit longer. And there we go. Perfect. And now let's.
You have a question? What fruit tonight?
We are going to have probably we have some cantaloupe and some honeydew melon left over. I think we're going to have them eat that up before I cut up our pineapple. I always like them to eat through one of the big fruits that I cut up before we move to the next one. That way it gets eaten. Otherwise, they'll always go for the next one, the freshest one that's cut up. Okay, let's get our meat seasoned.
And then when you have a second, they want to know, how do you make the tortillas up?
Yes, I will tell. Let me season up our meat, and then I'll let you guys know that. So we're going to start with some onion powder. We want about a tablespoon of onion powder. This is for 2 pounds of ground beef. I'm just going to sprinkle it over. This is going to give it a nice kind of savory flavor. And then we're going to use a little bit of oregano, about a teaspoon. And then I have some chili powder. I'll sprinkle this over. We're going to use about a half a tablespoon. And then I have some Mexican Fiesta seasoning. We're going to use, it's just a blend of everything. Got it from Whole Foods. About a teaspoon of this. It's got a little bit of a kick, so I don't use too much. And then just your good old plain taco seasoning. So this just really jazzes up your taco seasoning. And then we're going to add about a tablespoon of this in here, which just has all the good stuff in there and the salt. We're going to give it a good mix, and then we're going to add some water, and that water is going to kind of make it like a little stew, and it will like slowly evaporate out, but it will really allow those flavors to soak into the meat. So I'm going to go grab, I think I have a measuring cup over there. Let's fill it up, and we'll pour in. Let's grab a new one. Because I add water frequently in little batches at a time because I want it to evaporate. So I don't pour it all in at one time. We'll do it in batches. So we're going to put in about a cup to start with. And we're going to let it kind of simmer in there and let as it heats, you'll see the steam rise up, and that will cause the liquid to evaporate, but all of the seasonings and flavors stay there. But it just allows for your meat to be seasoned all the way through and a little bit more tender than just a quick fry. There we go.
And you have another question on the tortillas. How do you get them to bubble up?
So these are the sourdough in them, so they don't like puff up as if you were to use the like a baking soda recipe in it, but the sourdough has natural gases in it, and so they will rise and have a little bit in them, but they're not like the traditional ones that will pop so much. But the way they heat up, it gives you that kind of bubbly markings on it, just because they kind of pull back and retract against the heat. Let's pull there. Okay, the recipe for this is a very simple recipe. We used 1 cup sourdough starter with a 1/2 cup of olive oil and 2 teaspoons of salt, 2/3 cup of water, and then mix those ingredients together. Then we added in 3 1/3 cup of flour. And then you just mix them all the way up. I do a knead, then I let it sit for about 10 minutes, and then I do a second knead, and then shape, and then let them sit until you're ready to use them. Super easy, delicious. I think we have this video loaded on our lunchtime video uploaded. So that's us making them there if you want to see it in action. But and then so I think it's uploaded on the link on our page, and that's where we do always upload our things, and so it's there. And we made tortillas a couple other times, so there's a few other Mexican videos of like recipes there. Let's give it a good push. Okay.
The lunch stream was pretty cool.
Oh yes, for our lunchroom, for our lunch stream we made our chicken pot pies with our cheddar bay biscuit topping on it. I just had some like leftover rotisserie chicken that I needed to use up, so we made a quick pot pie filling, and then we topped it with the delicious cheddar bay biscuits, and it was so good. We baked them up in the mini Dutch ovens. It was adorable. I always love using my mini Dutch ovens. They're just so cute. Okay. We've got those. Let's give these a nice little stir. You can see the steam is coming off, and how most of that liquid has already evaporated. So in just a little bit, we'll add a bit more. And that will just make the meat really tender and soft versus like firm. Because sometimes ground beef, especially if you get lean ground beef, it can get tough. This helps keep it nice and tender. Okay, my tortillas, they need a minute. Okay, let's we'll do the lettuce first, and then we'll do our avocados for our guacamole. So I'm just going to take off just a little bit of lettuce here, and we're going to shred it for those who want to have some shredded lettuce on it. So I'm going to kind of cut it this way. We'll turn it, cut it.
Yeah, question. What kind of oil do you use to cook?
I use olive oil. So I really like olive oil. I like the taste of it. And I never heat it high enough to where it reaches its smoking point. So I just kind of use it for everything. And that way I don't have to buy like 20 different oils to have in there. So that's just my favorite. And I always buy it in the big old like gallon jugs of it. Okay, going over, just get a little bit over some of our shredded romaine to top our tacos with. There we go. We'll add this to our plate. And I'll slide that over because we'll add some cheese there. That way it'll be easy for the kids to make up their tacos. Okay, give this a stir. Then we're gonna take out the tortillas. We got nice edges on both sides. Nice and toasty and hot. Let's get them next set on. And then we're going to make our guacamole, because you can't have tacos without guacamole. Okay. Now I'm going to add, again, before we do our guacamole, you see how almost all of our liquid is gone? I'm going to add in another about cup of water. That was a big splash. And then we'll let it simmer out. This doesn't dilute the flavors at all, because all that evaporates is just the water. So it just makes the meat tender. So don't think you're going to dilute your flavors at all. There we go. Okay, that should be good. Now, let's make our guacamole. Get our avocados ready. And then we'll put some cilantro in there and some lime juice and all that jazz. Okay, let's see. Okay, not bad, not bad. You know, like when they're ready, I pop them in the fridge and I was like, oh, I've got to use these avocados. So most of them are good for the most part. That's the one I think Teddy dropped on the ground. Whenever my kids like the avocados, and I'm like, don't touch the avocados. If you drop them, they're ruined because they bruise up so quickly. There we go. So we've got a couple of brown spots, but no biggie. We'll just cut those out because they are not good. With avocados, the brown spots are no bueno. They're not ones that you can like salvage at all. So good thing we had a lot extra. Okay. And we'll cut that one off. And then we're going to add our avocados to our bowl. And then we'll put some fresh lime juice and garlic salt and just kind of do it really like an avocado smash. Pull out that piece. Bring my bowl up here. If your avocados are nice and ripe, they'll be able to slide off of your skin really easily. Just going to pull off any bruising. I know I once was at the store and I was like checking out, and the bag boy, he like dropped the avocados on the ground, and I was like, oh, guess we got to eat those up quick. There we go.
Someone just made the Rice Krispie treats from last night.
Oh, and I hope, were they delicious? Were they everything you hoped they were? I hope
They're
so.
cooling off right now.
Oh, good. They're so good. I will say, once you've made them this way, you'll never go back to the OG recipe because you'll just think that the original recipe is super dry. And that's like one of those things where I can't even, like, the store-bought Rice Krispie treats aren't any good because it's not as good. It's not as, like, you know, creamy or like gooey and delicious. There we go. So that should be good. Almost forgot this one. Okay. Just pull out any of the bruisings. I know I love avocados. I hate that they're like cost an arm and a leg, and they're the most like temperamental out there. They go bad so quickly. Okay, let me wash my hands since they've been guacified, and then let's flip our tortillas. This one bubbled up some. There we go. There we go. Sometimes, the longer you sit, they'll get a better bubble out with the sourdough, but I'm not about to wait even longer for them. I only do about like a 6-hour gap between making the dough and letting them sit, but they're still delicious. Okay. Let's get our limes that are in here. And I have my juicer. So we're going to put lime juice in the guacamole, the corn salsa, and the Pico De Gallo. You need that acidity in all of them. Let's see if I can smush some of these avocados down so we have a little bit of room. There we go. So you want to use, in the guacamole, we're going to use 2 or like a whole lime. And this is going to help. It's going to give you the right flavor profile, but it's going to help keep the avocados from turning brown. So you got to do it. And lemons don't work. You got to use lime. Lemons just aren't the right flavor profile. And fresh juice. Can't use that true lime bottled stuff. Got to use fresh limes. There we go. And then we're going to use in our corn salsa. There we go. So we'll use a half in there. You don't need quite as much. And then we're going to use half in our Pico De Gallo. That acidity just works really, really nice with it. There we go. Makes it a little bit more fresh. We give these a quick stir. And then we are going to chop up some fresh cilantro. We'll add cilantro to the corn salsa and the Pico De Gallo, and then we'll add some garlic salt, and then we'll start our mashing. Here we go. So we're going to get some more cilantro out. I always say I love cilantro in Mexican food. It's just so refreshing. It's even nicer when you get it fresh out of the garden. I planted a couple plants of it. So that I'm looking forward to that. When you plant it and pick it fresh, it has less. A lot of people complain that cilantro has a little bit of a dish soap taste. If you pick it fresh and chop it up right away, it has less of that flavor, which comes from the breakdown of an enzyme. And so it doesn't have as much of a dish soapy taste for those who complain of that. So use it fresh right away. When you buy it from the store and it's been sitting, then it has more of that flavor. There we go. And I will say the dry version of cilantro is called coriander. It does not taste, it does not resemble fresh cilantro at all. So it is not one where you can actually like use in place of. Okay. We're going to put a good pile of that in our corn salsa. Dab over here in our Pico De Gallo. Okay, let's give these a stir. And let's check on our tortillas over here. I think they're ready to pop off. Perfect. And we will get our next sets going. We're down to the final countdown. Ooh, now I want to sing this song. The final countdown. But there we go. And give it a good squeeze. Okay. We'll pop this one. Oops, I almost forgot my wax paper or my parchment paper there. The parchment paper just kind of prevents that sticking from it. And if it gets stuck to it, then you kind of have to pull it off and then it might break. Here we go. Getting a little cilantro on it from my fingers. And we'll press it down. Nice and firm.
You got a question? How many are you cooking for tonight?
We are cooking for, let's see, 7 + 2, 9 tonight. I don't know why I had to add that in because we always are cooking for 9. So it's my family, which is my husband and I and our 5 kids, and then my parents as well. So we cook for 9 pretty much almost every night for dinner. Lunch times, I typically just cook for 4 to 5, just less because my kids are all at school except for the little ones, and then my parents, of course. But kind of do have a little army to feed every day. Okay, let's get our guacamole mashing up here. I'm gonna turn that down just a bit. We're gonna add a bit of garlic salt in, about a teaspoon. And we're going to mash that up with that fresh lime juice. And it's super simple, but it is my kids' favorite way to have guacamole. So just this is all it is. No onions, tomatoes, any of that. If you want it, you can add a little bit of the salsa into it, but it just keeps it nice and smooth, and they love it this way. And Teddy always asks if we have leftovers, I'll save it for the morning. And then he always asks for avocado toast. So then I'll just put this on his toast in the morning. And then he's so happy. Well, he calls it guacamole toast. Can I have guacamole toast? And I'm like, yes, of course.
Do you have a question? Do you ever have lots of leftovers?
Not really. I do try to make sure I don't have too many leftovers. But if I do, a lot of times I'll feed them to my little ones for lunch. That way nothing goes to waste. We're not much of a leftovers family. None of us really likes to eat it. So I try to make the perfect amount for everyone. It also means you're not wasting as much, because I find leftovers are the things that go into your fridge to die. Okay, let me chop up some peppers for our kind of our salsas. Add a little bit of there. So these are just sweet peppers. They are not spicy at all, but I do love the pepper taste and the little crunch that they'll give. So we're just going to do kind of a mild dice, and we'll add these to the corn salsa and to the Pico De Gallo. And I'm a fan of sweet peppers, or the red, yellow, and orange bell peppers over the green ones. I think green peppers are just a bit more bitter and aren't as nice. So I always try to get just either the sweet ones or those. In my garden, I planted red and orange sweet bell peppers. So I only get those good stuff. Now the trick is just making sure my kids, don't pick them prematurely. I know the little ones, they're always like picking anything that grows in the garden. They see a flower and they're like, oh, I'm like, don't pick it. So it's for making sure they don't pick anything before it's ready to be harvested. I know, I remember when Evie was little, she always helped me harvest our garden, and she went out, was playing outside one day, and she like picked a bunch of green tomatoes. So luckily, green tomatoes can be salvaged, and we made fried green tomatoes, which were a hit. So it was a happy accident. Okay, let's give this a stir. Let's see if our tortillas need to be flipped, and then we're going to mix up those salsas. There we go. Perfect. Okay. This is our corn salsa. We'll add a little bit of garlic salt. You could always use regular salt, but I like the addition of the garlic. I think it's nicer. It goes well. So we're going to mix this up with our corn. So the corn is just frozen corn that I just let come to room temperature. It's delicious. It is amazing. If you've ever had the chipotle corn salsa, this tastes just like it, but a fraction of the cost. Okay, so we've got our delicious corn salsa. And then we'll use a little garlic salt for our things, and we'll mix that up. Again, it's very mild, kind of a Pico De Gallo. If you wanted to, you could throw in a jalapeno pepper, make it a bit spicier, but I like it mild. And so do my kids. We're spice babies. I know the other day when I made chicken enchiladas, and Torrin came home and he saw them, and he was like, oh, can I have some? And I was like, sure, you can have some. There's a couple left over. And he was like, oh, these are so hot. And I was like, oh, I did. I added some cayenne pepper. I don't add that often. He was like dousing them in sour cream. He kept eating them because they were delicious. But I think he ate like half a jar of sour cream with them to try to cool out the spice. Okay. Let's get our cheese out, and then we will be ready to assemble our tacos. Okay. So I always like to make a nice taco building station. Makes it a little bit easier for the kids. So when they can assemble everything, it's all right there instead of going into that. Okay. Let's see how these tortillas are. Perfect. See, we've got our nice little mountain of tortillas over here. We'll smush these next two, and then we're going to plate up. And nice and easy. Wow. I think I made 16 little tortillas here, and they are much more filling than the little tortillas I say you get at the store. They have more, they're definitely more heft to them, but they are delicious. There we go. Give these, and then let me check on our rice. Our rice should be just about done. Look at that. We're going to mix our herbs around. This is our lemon cilantro herby rice. Will be perfect for our tacos.
You have a question? Any dessert tonight?
Well, I would say Rice Krispie treats, but there's like a teeny tiny bit. But we do have leftover birthday cake for it, so I try not to make desserts every night, even though my kids would love that. They're always asking, when are you going to make a cookie? Or like Lena's like, I want you to make key lime pie. And Torrin's always asking for the Rice Krispie treats. Those are his favorite. We'll do these two. Let's plate up our dinner. So we'll have some cilantro herby rice on the side. And then I'll turn off my tacos here. It's nice and hot. Stim it. And let's build up our tacos. So we're going to put a little bit of our taco meat in each one. And this is our ground beef seasoned with chili powder, taco seasoning, oregano, garlic salt, all that jazz. And then we'll add some little bit of diced onions, a little bit of tomatoes, some lettuce, and then of course, can't forget the cheese. And my personal, you can't have a good taco without a nice squeeze of sour cream. Be really refreshing and kind of cool it up. And then we will have our corn salsa, guacamole, and pico de gallo with some good old tortilla chips as our kind of side for our dinner tonight. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us here today. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I try to do live cooking shows every single day, kind of show you what we're making for our family and hopefully teach you guys something along the way. We do upload all of our videos to the link on our page. So the best way to recreate our recipes is just to go find that video and watch along again. And then also we offer a membership for those of you who want to be more involved in our journey. We have some exclusive videos on there, more about our family, extra recipe cards, and all that jazz. But again, thank you so much for joining us here today. Don't forget to like and